Hello everyone, welcome back to Group D. So I am well aware here on the channel that I did a ultimate drift car video when we got the sprint car engine. Must be almost 2 years ago, maybe 18 months ago. And I never updated it. It's been very busy and we've had the car going for about that length of time, developing it and running it. And before it comes apart, which we started yesterday evening, before it comes apart, to go to its second evolution for this season, 2023, I said I'll run through and do the second part of that video and just go through all the ins and outs. If you follow us, I'm sure many of you have seen the car. The car is pretty damn good, pretty amazing. And yeah, I'll just go around it in detail and show you what makes it tick. And I hope you find it interesting. This has been coming for a long time, so we'll go through it, front, rear, underneath. I'll show you all the little bits and pieces and just what goes into a car like this. So join me. So the best place to start, I guess, is the engine bay. This is the small block Chevy, 6.8 litre, 410 cubic inch sprint car engine. Absolutely my favorite engine that I've ever driven. Thing is amazing. Revs like a motorbike, but the torque and the power, I just love the damn thing. If you want more info on that, go back and watch part one. I went into it in depth while it was out, but here it is in, and I guess we addressed the elephant in the room, which is the exhaust system. So this is a 180-degree crossover exhaust. That means that two branches from this bank, we'll say the driver's side bank, come in and go into one collector, and then two branches from this side go into the same collector, and then the remainder pop into the other collector. So it crosses over, hence the name crossover. This is a thing we did as a bit of a gimmick. It creates a little bit more of a high-pitched sound, so we did it for sound. That sounds a little bit silly maybe, since we do everything here for kind of maximum performance, and this exhaust isn't what you would use for maximum performance, but it was something that hadn't been done before, and I guess doing things that haven't been done before are our forte as well. So we made this all in-house. Now, we made it from mild steel. That's why it's gone rusty at the moment, as it is a prototype thing, you know, just something that we want to try out. We didn't want to make it all in stainless and then not be happy with it. I'm happy enough with it. It's suited for what we were using the car for. So when we used the car in Ireland and the UK last season, we were limited on what tires we could use. So this exhaust won't create the peak horsepower that the engine is capable of. It's more of a mid-range exhaust, so it drops the ultimate horsepower a little bit. So we were concerned we might have too much horsepower, too much for the tires, and just be sitting there smoking them. So we ended up going with this thing. It is to be changed now moving forward. This chassis is working really well, and it turns out we can put all of the power to ground, and we can actually put even more power to the ground. We rarely run this car on absolute full kill because it doesn't have the torque or the power for that mode, or else I'm not a good enough driver for that mode, or whatever you want to say. It could do with just a little bit more power and torque to make the car more drivable on the full grip setting. So this exhaust is gonna go sometime this year. I don't know when I'm gonna get time to change it, but we're going to go back to a conventional 4-to-1 on each side. And look, the 4-to-1, it's a lot more boring, but it makes more power. It is the best system. So we have a plan in action for that. It's going to be nice and interesting again. But when we'll get it done this year is another question. So I think for the start of this year, we'll still be remaining pretty much how the front of it is. But that is the exhaust system. Exits out the left front wheel, which is kind of cool for tandeming because you can almost melt the stickers off other people's cars, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that is the exhaust system, which smacks you in the face the minute you open the bonnet, but there's a lot of other cool details going on here. So you have the K&N carbon fiber airbox, which is extremely light and extremely expensive. You can see the kind of burn marks on it from the ITVs popping out through the trumpets underneath. I ran this engine in Formula D. I've ran it myself for the past 2 seasons or whatever. They always give a kickback out through the ITBs. It's just one of those things. I never seem to have it that it doesn't give a kick out through the ITBs. Kind of when you come off the handbrake and give it full throttle or something, it can just kick back out through them with just a bit of fuel in the runner. Coils are up here, Haltech coils. That's something very easy to look at. We did our own custom plug leads then. There was a huge problem we had in Formula D was melting plug leads. Now I will say in FD, the manifolds were going down and out the back. So you had plug leads in between runners and all that. And the beauty of the high-rise manifold and out the front is we can make the plug leads come straight out. They have loads of breathing room. They never get hot. They've been just bomb-proof since we built it, which is exactly what we try to do on everything. It's just think of the best way of doing it, modify, make, do what we got to do for it to last and be reliable, and just execute it as best we can then. And it works out pretty well for us. So another thing I want to address is just the fucking state of the car. This was out in a place called Tullyroan in the north of Ireland last, and it was an absolute washout. And the whole car got destroyed, and it's just been in storage since because I'm a terrible owner and I never fucking washed it before I put it in storage. Because I just drive the shit out of them and break everything. And washing cars, I can't remember the last time I washed a car. I hate washing cars. Cars are meant to be driven. Anyway, let's look at some other cool shit. So the oil system is really nice in this. It's a daily dry sump kit, I think, but it's a full billet pan. We'll have a look at that underneath, but there's the belt. Coming over to the pump, which is a little bit hard to see, but we'll get in there. Focus, yep, that's the pump. And then it comes out of the pump and it comes through the filter, the Peterson filter housing here, which is really nice. It has a priming pump in it, so anytime the engine is idle for a good while, we can build up oil pressure here with the drill, so we can lubricate the whole engine without having to start it, so the engine never starts kind of dry or whatever you want to say. This is where the oil goes into the top of the engine, which is quite weird, and we do keep a mechanical oil pressure gauge there, so we can see it build oil pressure. We can also, if you ever have electrical failure or anything, a mechanical oil pressure gauge somewhere, we put it in all our top-end builds, with everything being electrical, everything being sensors, everything being CAN, all that kind of crap. Sometimes you just want to see if you have mechanical oil pressure. You just can't beat it. Out to the massive Mocal oil cooler here, which takes its air in the front bumper only, so the rest of the front bumper is blocked off. We just take air in for the oil cooler. Comes out, there's a 8-inch Bishimoto fan on the back of it. The Haltech ECU regulates oil temperature and everything. It's all automatic, so you don't have to do shit. There's no buttons or anything in this car. There's just an ignition switch and a push button start, and that's it. You don't turn anything on, you don't turn anything off. So this is a really cool feature, really expensive. We take our oil pressure, or electronic oil pressure for the ECU here. It's just a handy place to take it. So you're all dash 12 lines, everything very expensive. This guy works. This line is actually back to the dry sump tank. So when you spin this with the drill, it pulls the oil forward from the dry sump tank and it shuts off the oil from the engine, we'll say, that passes through it under pressure when the engine is running. So there's a valve in here that shuts either way once it sees oil from either hose, if you know what I mean. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but that's how it works. So when you hit the drill here, spin the drill on this, it pulls it from the tank, puts it into the pressure side, up here, and along this guy back into the engine. Then when you start the engine, the dry sump pump pulls oil through this guy from the dry sump tank, this guy, and it shuts this guy internally. And it works perfectly. It's a really nice piece of kit, but as I said, it's expensive. But when you have an engine like this and you leave it static for, it can be static over the winter for 4 months or so, able to build oil pressure before you start it when you're dealing with tolerances like this in this engine is something that I just wanted. I have it in the Audi Quattro as well. I like that idea of it, so I did it. While we're here, that's the oil system. While we're here, this is the dry sump pump that we use on everything now. This is the best one that I've found. I stole the cap for another car, so don't think I go around with no cap. I just had to get a cap. This was a little bit of an afterthought. That's why it's out here. The original dry sump pump was in the back of the car. Power steering pump, I should say. This one we put out here as a test to see what we thought of it, and it's been fantastic. I'm pretty sure it's a Delphi pump. I think it's a Delphi that make this pump. We use it in everything. You can actually buy them off us now. We have quite a lot of them in stock. You can buy them in groupd.ie. They're quite hard to find, so you have to have this specific one, but it's the best steering feel of any. So I highly recommend that modification. It transforms the steering of so many cars. So really happy with that. Yeah, so you have a turbo smart fuel pressure regulator here. You have the other 4 coils over there. And that's pretty much all there is to the sprint car engine there. Let me take off the airbox and show you the sexiness inside. There we go. There's your 8 trumpets or funnels or whatever you want to call them. So, there's your throttle plates. I think they're 55s, I think, the throttles. Quite large. Yeah, you can see quite a bit of blackness coming up through them. This one is cleaner, but it might be dirty on the... Might look the same on this side. I don't know. This thing runs so good, I don't fuck with it. Sure, we check it over and double check everything, but there's such a short runner from here. You're talking about from here to the head, just down there. It's such a short runner that there's a lot of that's just green with fuel, with the Sunoco race fuel. It's such a short run. Maybe I don't have a light, but it's such a short run down to the... I'm actually blocking the light more than anything. You can actually see into the head, almost see the valves looking down. As it's such a short run, the fuel, so much fuel going in it, it could probably do with a bit of a longer runner for atomization or something. I don't fucking know. I did some work with the ITB, so it's a Kinsler ITB system in here. Very expensive shit. And there's big injectors in it, I think. Are they thousands? They might be too big, but I dropped the whole airbox, so I modified the top of the injectors, I modified the top of the ITBs, sorry, and the brackets for the fuel rails. So I dropped the fuel rails. You can see I had to weld on a fitting there at the front. Yeah, I had to weld on a piece at the back because I couldn't get the angles on the I couldn't get the AN fittings onto the rails because the hex of the AN fitting was too big. So I welded a piece on at an angle to do it. So I really concentrated on dropping the airbox down just to get it out of my field of vision. We've had this setup in Formula D, obviously, and you had the big 6-inch airbox, plus this was a lot higher, and it's like rightly in the way of the windscreen. I never really liked it across my vision, even though on the drifting, you know, you're kind of looking lefty righty the whole time, but I wanted this down and I wanted to be able to see over it at all times. So that's why we went with this is the 4.5-inch high airbox, I think. And then I did work on dropping the ITBs. And I mean, we could fuck around with with runner lints on the trumpets and stuff, and maybe you might, you know, pick up the pulses better going into the engine and increase your torque in some way, shape or form. But when you have 600 foot-pounds of torque or 6 something, I mean, how much more do you want or need? I'm happy that it's out of my way. I know it's a slight compromise, but I just compacted the whole package down and I'm happy with it. I have to take these ITBs out now. I'm going to take it all apart and I'm going to clean everything up for this year, make sure everything is sweet, put all new gaskets everywhere. But what a beautiful thing. Look, 288s. It's just pure sex. It's just fucking pure money. Look at that. Real nice. It actually has a rear window wiper motor from a Nissan Micra. That's about the most boring detail on the whole car. This is cool. This is the breather for the crankcase. Now, with a... Look at the dirt on it, class. With a dry sump system, you run the engine under full vacuum. So you don't need a breather on the engine itself. Now you can, if you had a lot of blow-by, maybe in a turbo car or whatever, if you had a lot of blow-by past the piston rings, you might leave it vent to atmosphere. You will make slightly more horsepower by running it under vacuum because the conrod's rotating assembly, the crankshaft, is spinning around in a vacuum in the crankcase rather than pushing air out of its way. How much it's going to be worth again when you're into drifting, you know, 600, 700, 800 horsepower. If it's worth 10 horsepower, what's the fucking point? But we've got a good compromise here is we have a pop-off valve on the crankcase. So this is sealed until the crankcase builds up like a PSI of pressure. This valve in here with a really light spring in it pops off and lets the crankcase breathe. So I think it's the best of both worlds for what we're doing. If there's no crankcase pressure, no blow-by from the pistons, the whole thing is sealed and it'll be maximum horsepower. If there's some blow-by, then this pop-off valve will go off at a very, very low positive pressure and just leave the air out of the crankcase. So we went for the best of both worlds on that setup. I think that's the perfect way of doing it. I don't know if there's any blow-by. I never checked how much vacuum the crankcase pulls. I don't really care. I just want to drive the car. But when I was designing it first, I was like, okay, let's keep it simple but smart and put on this pop-off valve, so it's pretty cool. These blue fittings are actually water. So there's 4 water lines and I'm after rubbing the fiberglass on the manifold and now I'm itchy straight away. Yeah, there's 4 water lines out of the head, 2 at the front, 2 at the back, which is quite weird. They're quite small too, but this thing runs perfectly. And there's 2 -16s here and here that go back to an electric water pump at the rear. So it takes, it pushes in the water into each bank, -16 down here, an electric water pump. And this thing runs at like whatever temperature we set it to, normally like 85 degrees, 90 degrees, and it just sits there all day long. You don't even have to worry about it. So it's fantastic. If you keep running, you can build a bit of oil temperature. But once you just stop and slow down, it just comes straight back down again. So it's just, we never have an issue with any of our cars building heat. Always the recipe we stick to works perfectly. Nice, really expensive throttle position sensor, but we did have a big problem with throttle position before we put that sensor in. So that sensor is worth the money. Any other one wasn't reading correctly. We weren't happy with it. And there's your air temperature sensor coming up into the airbox. So it takes the temp from in here and keeps the loom. The loom goes in the back and loops around and does the injectors on this side last and kind of does everything the whole way around. And your home signal is back here. So I'm running it sequential injection and direct fire ignition. So it's got a home signal at the back. It's got the big original distributor area is just a single sensor for home position. And then if you can see, that is the crank. Where's my finger? There, that's the crank position. And it has teeth on the harmonic balancer here. So that picks up your RPM, so that's your trigger. And all bolts together nicely. There's a high amp alternator here, just on a V-belt, which is kind of scary. And the V-belt, there'll be rubber flying off it, as you can see. We had to make all this because it wouldn't fit with the motor plate bolt direct to the chassis, no rubber mounts or anything. And we got this in here. That's a PowerMaster single wire, non-regulated, like 14.1 volt alternator. We use them in a lot of cars, mostly V8 stuff. Pops on. Look at the state of the pulley up here, got all rusty and everything, fuck's sake. Yeah, these alternators are class. PowerMaster ones, really like them. And yeah, I don't think if there's anything else that you want to know about, just let me know in the comments. But it's normally aspirated. There isn't, even though it's fucking badass and mental, there isn't that much to it. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow, and away you go. It's just massive, and you don't expect it to rev like it does, but it is very, very impressive. So, cool-a-bool. So thanks for watching, everyone. Any comments, leave them below, and I will reply. Any questions, I'll reply to them all. This is it for part 2. Part 3 coming up very shortly, so I'll upload that as soon as possible. Thanks for watching.